Hey, what's up, everybody? The Morning After podcast is back. Why? Because Moon Knight just dropped on Disney Plus, and I'm super excited to talk about it with all of you guys. Again, the Morning After Spoiler podcast is a special podcast that appears every time there's a major show that drops, and usually that's around the Disney Plus streaming service. So that's either going to be a Marvel series or something Star Wars related, right? But that doesn't mean that I won't talk about anything else. If there's another big show that drops from within the fandom, then I will definitely talk about it. But right now, it is all about Moon Knight. So really happy to be back. Glad to have all of you join me back again on this special podcast here. And again, if you are interested to hear every week about what I talk about when it comes to these shows, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like that button, smash it, hit it, give it a great uppercut. You know, it really helps the channel and supports the channel. It goes a very long way. And if you're looking for an audio format of this episode, you can find it on your podcast platform of choice, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Google or Spotify. Just look for the Low-Key Geek channel there, and you will find these episodes, and you could easily download them there. So really excited to talk about this new Marvel show. It's one of those shows that I think it's new. It's going to feel really new because it's the first time we're being introduced to a brand new character that has not already been previously introduced to us in any Marvel movie. I know that we were introduced to Kate Bishop in the last Hawkeye series, but still that show was centered around Hawkeye, right? Someone that we're already familiar with. This is the first time now during the Disney Plus era of Marvel shows that we are really truly introduced to a main character that has not been introduced in the past. And with Oscar Isaac, the great actor and talent that he is, fulfilling this role, it's going to be very, very exciting to see how this show progresses and how the character progresses there. So before I get into spoilers and stuff like that, I just want to talk about briefly my initial thoughts of the episode. This was definitely a good setup episode. It sets the tone, it sets the pacing of what we're expected to see. It really introduces us well to the character that Oscar Isaac is playing. We meet him first as Stephen Grant. Later on, we find out that there's something going on more within Stephen Grant that he is not even aware of. But we really get to see the full persona of Stephen and how he lives his day to day and everything like that, and the struggles that he's going with. We get into some action immediately within the episode, and it's refreshing in a way because now with like all the Netflix Marvel shows on Disney Plus and the new parental control ratings that are implemented there, the TVMAs and all that, this show is really trying to push the boundaries on how far it can go within the TV-14 rating. It's still available for everyone to watch. It's not considered to be TVMA, but there's a good amount of like violence in this episode. We see a good amount of blood, a good amount of fighting. We don't actually see the moments that maybe someone gets hit or hurt or shot or what have you, but we definitely see the aftermath, and it's pretty bloody, and it can be very, very off-putting for younger viewers, I think, which is very interesting too, because this week we just found out that Disney Plus is starting to censor some older Marvel shows. For example, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, there have been some scenes that have already been altered to kind of remove a lot of the bloody scenes. Not all of it, but certain scenes that may be deemed a little bit too much for a TV-14 rating here in the US, which is really interesting, and it kind of makes a little bit of sense because they didn't have TVMA, that option before, and I think they were really, again, trying to see how far they can push their boundaries of what they can let go. And now that they do have that ability to have this adult mature rating available on the platform, they want to make sure that I think all the previous episodes adhere more to their proposed rating, which is a TV-14 for a more broader audience, right? Not saying I think it's right what they're doing. It always sucks when they have to go back and alter something. And not that it affects the plot of any episode, but for anyone who, enjoyed those episodes in the past, I do think it kind of sucks if you were to go back and rewatch it and then you realize, wait a minute, this is not how I remember it, right? But we'll see what happens with Moon Knight itself. But like I said, in this first episode, you do see a good amount of blood and violence in there. But, overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought in the beginning, with the quirkiness and, the kind of persona that Steven has, the way that Oscar Isaac portrays him, I thought it was going to get a little bit too tiring right away, like too comical, too comic-y, right? With this little like kind of squeamish, like little voice, and the way he's like very mousy, right? And yeah, you get the sense very early on that he's definitely a loner, a little awkward, and he doesn't really get along with a lot of people, and most people don't even really want to acknowledge him for the most part. But I think that's obviously going to later change along down the line. The more maybe confidence he gets, the more maybe he gets tied into the inner stuff that's happening within him, that he's slowly learning to find out that there is something more than what he thinks is happening to him. But I really enjoyed this first episode. Like I said, it's a good setup episode. And it really sets the tone. We get to see Ethan Hawke's character. He portrays a character called Dr. Arthur Harrow. Very tied. It looks like he's like the leader of a cult in a way. But you could tell it definitely ties into a lot of the more supernatural aspects of the universe. And this is definitely the foray for Marvel to go into the supernatural now. Now that we're dealing with Moon Knight and Arthur here, with what they're doing with all the Egyptian lore and everything like that, it's really, really fun and exciting to see, and open this doorway into what will eventually lead into characters like Blade, and Black Knight, that we were introduced to at the end of the Eternals and things like that. So really, really, really fun stuff. No other kind of major reveals happened within this episode, with the exception of just what is going on within Steven, that, for those of you who do know the Moon Knight character, it's a very interesting character where he deals with kind of like multiple personalities, right? And you get to see him realize that there is something more to what's going on. And I will get into more details about how they did that in the spoiler version of this episode. But yeah, overall, I'm really excited. It definitely, it feels like a Marvel show, but I do feel like it's pushing the envelope a little bit further here. And like I said, it is refreshing to be introduced to something very brand new, something that we have not been a part of within the whole MCU and Marvel universe as of yet. With the previous shows, like I said, let's run down the list here. WandaVision, we're already familiar with Wanda and Vision, and seeing their journeys. It wasn't like really anything new, but yes, we were introduced to some minor characters that may potentially play bigger roles later on down the lines. But we're already familiar with that story, and it's picking up from the events that happened within the Avengers movies, right? Then, you had Captain America and Winter Soldier, again, two characters that we are really familiar with, and them too are picking things up from the events of what happened in the past movies. Then you got Loki, same situation, him going through what he's going through there. Then you had I'm trying to think what else. There's so many Marvel shows that come out. What If is really like a one-off. It's something that it's new, but it was also something that, well, is this really going to be canon or not? Maybe this was just like a fun little getaway and all that. And then of course, like Hawkeye, like I said, we're dealing with the aftermath of what happened in the Avengers movies. And we do get introduced to Kate Bishop, which is refreshing in itself, but still it's revolving around the lore of Hawkeye. and him going through his Ronin phase and all that stuff like that. So it's stuff that we are picking the story back up from what was previously introduced to us in the past. With Moon Knight, this is fresh, brand new, fresh. We're diving into a whole new realm of the MCU, and we are going to be learning things episode by episode, right? So that's why I think it's really exciting, and it's going to be really different. We're still not sure where Moon Knight is going to tie into the rest of the universe, or is this something where they're going to try to keep a little bit separate and out of the main MCU core universe? And when I say that, I'm referring to like Doctor Strange and Wanda and Captain Marvel and all that stuff, Captain America, Winter Soldier. Like, I feel like that's the main core group right there. Your Ant-Man and whatever. This could be the start of something separate. Just like in the comics, you had your Marvel Knights run where it dealt mostly with the supernatural, really. And it was like a more darker tone. So with Moon Knight being the first to be introduced here, then, like I said, it could lead into Blade and, whoever else, Werewolf by Night. I think they're working on something like that. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do with this part of the universe. So yeah, let me know in the comments your initial thoughts of this first episode. Not a whole lot of reveals, but we got a good sense of like who Dr. Arthur Harrow is and what he's involved in, right? Still a lot of mystery there, but we get a good sense of that type of character. Steven, of course, we are seeing what he's going through and everything like that. But that's it. Those are really the two main characters that we saw in this episode, but we are already starting to get the feeling of what they might be going through and how they're going to play a specific role within this series. So let me know what you think about it in the comments, and what you think of the overall episode. Hey guys and gals, looking for the latest and greatest in collectibles and pop culture merchandise? Well, have I got the perfect destination for all of you. For example, want an awesome Moon Knight collectible before anybody else? Pre-order this great Moon Knight statue now from Entertainment Earth. Entertainment Earth is the premier place online for the latest and greatest toys, the most exciting action figures, and the coolest gifts and collectibles pop culture has to offer. From television, movies, sports, collectibles, comics, internet memes, and every fandom in between. They drop new products daily and curate their selection so you don't miss out. Whether you're looking for something stellar from a galaxy far, far away with Star Wars, or from the streets of Gotham City with DC Comics, they've got surprises for everyone. Get access to exclusive releases and limited run pre-orders. You can even reserve hard to find items before they arrive. From Funko to Hasbro, all your favorite vendors are represented in their robust catalog of cool collectibles. They are pleased to offer risk-free shopping with their industry-leading mint condition guarantee and hassle-free 90-day returns. Entertainment Earth has been making pop culture fans happy for 25 years now and have no signs of slowing down. What's great is that for US shoppers, they're currently offering free shipping for any orders placed above $49. Not in the US? Don't worry. Entertainment Earth ships globally. Visit the special link in the description of this episode to take advantage of this offer and buy yourself or a loved one something really cool. Entertainment Earth, so many toys, so much fun. I'm going to go now into some spoiler talk, so be forewarned. If you haven't watched this episode yet, then please bookmark, save this video for later, save this whole episode and come back to it after you watch the episode, so that you could feel like you're not going to get spoiled with anything, obviously, and we can talk more freely and have a better conversation about the episode as a whole. So what I really liked the way this episode started was we really get to see immediately Arthur, right? And he's a very unique individual, and it looks like he puts himself through a lot of pain to see how much he can endure and all that. And that's why you get that sense of like, is this guy really supernatural? What is his overall motives? Is this, it just feels very cultish, right? And you see that later on in the episode with all of his following, and he has like this following in this village as he's judging people, about their purity and how good they are. And if they pass the test, then they live a good life, and they get to live to see what that group has in store for humanity. And if they're not pure, well, you're not worthy enough to live on, to experience everything that we're working on. So peace out. You're dead. Get out of here, right? Poor old lady had no chance, like she just was out just like that after she was judged. But, I did some digging here because obviously I want to know a little bit more, because full disclosure here, like I am not 100% familiar with Moon Knight in the comic books. So I'm going through this episode just like a lot of you guys and girls who maybe are not as familiar with Moon Knight, and I'm learning a lot about it as I'm watching the show. And of course, it leads to some, research and looking up things online and everything like that. So I did some digging on Marvel's website, and I want to share some of this stuff with you guys so that you know a little bit more about some of the characters. So for example, Dr. Arthur Harrow. He is described as seeing humans as healthy specimens to experiment upon and cure his painful paralysis. Dr. Arthur Harrow stops at nothing to be free of his suffering. It later on goes down to say that the genius scientist and surgeon Dr. Arthur Harrow performs unscrupulous surgeries on unwilling patients in order to cure himself of his painful paralysis. So it's really interesting here that in the comics, apparently he is paralyzed, right? He goes through these experiments to try to figure out how he can better improve on his own self, right? And he experiments on humans and all that, but that's not how he's so far perceived in the show. He's walking about, but he does have a cane. So maybe the things that he is doing is working to a certain extent, right? The judging of the people, those who are unpure, is he sucking the souls from them and then ingesting it into himself to make his body more better and more manageable, right? So it's really interesting to see how that will play out based on how it is in the comic books. But the whole opening intro, the cold open there was really, really well done, and it already sets the tone there. Then we fast forward and we see Steven, and he wakes up in bed, and you already see that this guy has lived quite a life, right? He shackles himself up to his bed, and he has this whole contraction where it's like he got the shackles, he has sand around his bed, and he has the tape on the door. So your first instinct is that, wow, this guy probably has a bad sleepwalking disorder, right? So he probably sleepwalks at night, goes out, gets himself into some sort of mischief or trouble, and he wakes up somewhere in a ditch or whatever the case is, right? So he's trying his best to avoid that. Then after going through all his morning routine, he calls his mom, who looks like she's like a traveler, and he's leaving him a voice message. He has a cute little goldfish that he feeds, and he's getting himself ready for work. You could tell he's kind of like a mess, he's not all put together that great. So he's rushing for the bus, and he's constantly late to work. He's falling asleep on the bus and being a nuisance to people around him. And then when he shows up at work, he's totally not respected there, right? And especially from his boss. And I think her character is really quite fascinating. And they have such a great back and forth with themselves there. He's obviously he's been late a lot to work, and now he has inventory duty that's scheduled for him, but you could tell he aspires to want to be more, right? So he has that intelligence. He obviously loves Egyptian lore and history and everything, and you see this really cute scene with a younger visitor of the museum where he works at, and he's giving her kind of a brief history of how they mummify people and how they put them in the sarcophaguses and all that stuff like that. And then he's yanked away because he has his duties at the gift shop. But then you have that interesting scene with one of the tour guides where apparently there was a date set up that he is not aware of. So this is all pretty new to him. So already in that one instant, you get a sense of, wait a minute, is his other persona possibly interfering with his day-to-day already, that things like that is happening without his knowledge, right? So really, really cool things. And again, you're getting a sense of the struggle that Steven is dealing with, right? And, as he's leaving the museum, again, the security guard doesn't even really know his real name. And, you could kind of see he's like bummed out. He's like, I just want to have friends. I just want to be, get along with people. I just want people to recognize me and all that. He consoles with a street performer. He talks about, his dating life, or what would potentially be his dating life. And, I guess he talks to this guy about all of his troubles and his family or whatever. You could sense that this is a daily or weekly routine that he goes through. And this is probably the only friend he has in life right now, which is pretty sad. I will say that for the Steven character alone, I do feel sorry for him, because he is this kind of like awkward dude, and he's bumbling around and just trying to make a name for himself, or at least just trying to get along with people, and it looks like that's a struggle for him, right? So he calls in a night, he goes back to bed, during doing his usual thing, but you can also sense that he's trying his best to stay awake, because he's afraid. He's afraid of what will happen if he sleepwalks again. At least that is what we are to believe. He eventually does fall asleep, and then he wakes up in the Alps somewhere. And apparently he already got himself in some trouble. His jaw's not aligned right. He's kind of bloody in the mouth, and you have like these these army dudes or these guards chasing him, right? And he's running around in town and doing all that stuff like that. And then he finds himself in this square where we see Dr. Arthur, marching in, assumingly coming from that place where we saw him come from in the beginning of the episode. And doing his usual, I guess, cult-like routine where he starts judging people in the square to see who's worthy to stick around. And that's where we see like one person is pure and clean and is able to live on, and the poor old lady did not. Soul gets sucked out and she passes away, right? And then, the guards come over and they say, oh, we had a problem with some sort of exchange and all that stuff like that. And then that's when they find that poor Steven is hanging out in the group of people, and he has in his possession this scarab that apparently he stole from them. It's still not sure and clear as to how he came across this possession of this thing, but he has his voice in his head telling him, like, oh no, the dweeb is back. Oh no, this poor sap, let Mark take back control. And he's like, oh, excuse me? He's like, I don't know what's going on and all that. So apparently this scarab is something that belongs to Arthur, right? So he's asking for it back. And this is one of the bits of comedy within this episode that I really don't mind, because I feel like it kind of fits, where, Steven wants to give it back because he doesn't want any trouble, but whatever's controlling him inside obviously doesn't want him to give it up. So they go through this whole like charade of like, here you go. Nope, not going to do it. And, he's like, I'm not doing this. I'm not controlling. And the acting from Oscar is so good in this scene, because again, you're believing that this bumbling fool of a guy is not in control of anything, and he have something inner within him that's taking full control and ownership of the situation, right? So eventually the guards take control of him and bring him somewhere, and they're really trying to take the scarab out, and they get it, and then flash. The way that they manage the kind of shifting of him passing out, blacking out, and then snapping back into reality as Steven. So we're seeing it through the eyes of Steven right now. And then he comes to, like, I really love how they do that. It's like, you know how they always have like those epilepsy warnings in front of video games or movies when they say like, oh, this thing contains too much flashing lights and you may cause seizures. They should probably have that same warning here, because I feel like those quick flashes in between consciousnesses, it could affect someone with that type of issue, right? But when he snaps back in, and this is what I talk about when I talk about the violence, he's around it, everyone is bloody on the floor around him. So whoever took over wiped everyone around him out, and he's holding the scarab all bloody handed and everything like that. And he's like, oh, I don't know what the hell happened, but I need to get the hell out of here, right? So he commandeers like a cupcake truck, and then they do this really, really awesome car chase scene, you know. And the music, by the way, the music in this episode was great. So now you have Wham playing during this whole portion of the episode, you know, Wake Me Up and all that. And they're going through like the Alps and all the curves and twists and all that. And you have these guys that are really chasing him down. And again, one of them board the truck and, you know, is about to like knock him out. And then he goes through that same flash again. And then you see the guy in the back, obviously with a bullet hole in his head, blood streaming down, and he flies out of the truck, right? So this is what I'm talking about, the violence portion of the episode. They're really, really pushing the boundaries. And then, you know, they're still chasing, and then he flashes again, and then he finds out that he's driving backwards and all this stuff. And, you know, just when he thought he was in the clear, he gets, you know, surrounded by these guards, and then only for them to get wiped out by a bunch of logs. Again, we don't know how any of that happened, because he flashes out again and wakes up in bed. And for him, Steven, he now thinks this was all a dream. You know, he used to read Word Up magazine. So he wakes up in bed. He's like, oh, this was just a dream. Yeah. So he unshackles himself. He checks the sand. Oh, nothing happened there. The tape is still fully secured on the door. So he's like, whatever. Has his breakfast, talks to his fish. Wait a minute. What's up with the fish? He finds out that, whoa, the goldfish. Now, significance of the goldfish was that his fish had one bum fin, kind of like, you know, Finding Nemo, right? Now he looks and he has two fully grown fins. He's like, wait a minute, something's really fucked up here, right? Goes to the pet shop, and she's like, look, we don't carry or sell any deformed fish here. We already told you this yesterday. And he's like, wait a minute, I wasn't here yesterday. And then they go through this back and forth, and he looks at the time. He's like, oh no, I got that date with that tour guide. I gotta go. Goes, she doesn't show up, calls her up. It's like, hey, you idiot. You know, why are you calling me now? I already had dinner by myself thanks to you. By the way, it's Sunday. He's like, no, it's not. It's Friday. We have a date tonight, you know? And I know, you dumb tool, it's Sunday. It's like, Sunday? So apparently it sounds like he has lost 2 full days, you know, just unbeknownst to him, right? So of course he's like wondering like, what the hell is happening, right? First of all, he missed out on this awesome date with this good-looking tour guide, you know, and he was hoping to have a relationship and all this stuff like that. Now he has a new fish, or something happened to his fish there, and he has no idea what's happening, right? So he goes back home, and I love this scene where he notices something's amiss, right? And he notices that there's some scratches on the floor, and it looks like the table is used to kind of you know, levitate him so that he can go ahead and climb up and go into the secret compartment, where he finds a cell phone and a key. And he's looking through the cell phone. He's like, what is this? And there's only like 2 numbers, right? And he gets a call from one of the numbers. I believe the name is Layla, right? And she's screaming at him. She's like, where have you been? You've been missing for several months, and you don't dare return my calls, and da-da-da-da-da, and all that craziness. And he's like, whoa, wait a minute. What? I don't know what's happening here, right? So he's freaking out and all that stuff. And he's trying his best to kind of get some sort of senses to it all. And, you know, he runs out and he starts seeing images. He starts seeing, first of all, he hears another voice. And then he sees a reflection in the mirror of someone talking to him, which looks like it's himself, right? And, you know, now we're starting to really get the sense of this other personality that's within him that's trying to get out. You know, kind of like almost like a Hulk situation where you always had Bruce Banner and you had the Hulk, and the Hulk hated Bruce. The Hulk wanted Bruce out of the picture. And it's like, let me take over, puny human and all that stuff like that. But obviously there's something even more at play here, why the importance that, you know, this inner person wants to take over. So he's trying to get a sense of what's going on and all that. And then he hears the other voice, you know, the other voice that's like ragging on him. It's like, why don't you just let this Mark take over? You know, and it's like he sees an image of what looks like something Egyptian, right? And you know, this bird-like creature that is like trying to grab him and haunt him and all that stuff like that. And as he sees this image, he snaps back again to another reality. He's back on the bus, right? Going to work, apparently. Now, I think before we continue, we should talk about what this image is and who this big being is that's talking to him, that's really trying to take over. So the name wasn't really fully mentioned in the episode, but again, if you do some research, you know that this is Khonshu. So let me pull this up right here. So Khonshu, and then again, this is the lore from within comics, right? So Khonshu is a nocturnal god of the moon, god of vengeance, and the shepherd to the lost. He was described as the greatest god of the great gods. He represented the moon, a universal symbol for the redemptive power of insubordination, femininity, and sensitivity. He was a protector of travelers in the night and guardian of travelers through time. He was a member of the Heliopolitan race of gods who lived in the extra-dimensional realm of celestial Heliopolis, adjacent to Earth, and was worshipped by the people of ancient Egypt. Not being able to enter the earthly plane, so throughout history he would pick champions who would work as an avatar and be guided by his will. The lone warrior would then be called Moon Knight. So this is the, I guess you could call the Egyptian god soul, whatever you want to call it, that gives Moon Knight his powers. He picks this champion that is like an earthly representative, and this is the person that is deemed as Moon Knight, and he does what he does, right? So that is basically what this creature is and what the significance and importance it is within the Moon Knight story. And I believe what's happening here is that since Steven has multiple personalities, he as Steven, and then you have Mark Spector, who's this other personality who, for all intents and purposes, looks like he's like a mercenary. This was the persona that Khonshu chose to be the representative of Moon Knight. And I feel like that all comes into play towards the end of the episode. But it's also good to understand the importance of who this being is and how he's going to play in the storyline. It goes on to more background and story about Khonshu and his significance in ancient Egypt, and how he, kind of picked Moon Knights across time and everything like that. So if you want to check it out, go to marvel.fandom.com, do a search for Khonshu, and you could find the full story there. Or, there's videos on YouTube right now that will, dive deeper into the Khonshu lore and tell you the story of Khonshu. But for all intents purposes, that is what Khonshu is within this story, right? So, and like I said, we see it in the episode where he's being chased down by this being, right? And that is Khonshu, and that's why Khonshu is chasing him down, because Khonshu wants Mark back. He doesn't want this bumbling idiot Steven, taking over the body, right? So like I said, Steven wakes up and he's going back to work and he's freaking out because he feels like he's being chased by not only Khonshu, but also on the bus as he's leaving, he sees that for somehow or some reason, he's being followed by Arthur. Arthur sees him on the bus and he sees Arthur on the bus. And he's like, oh no, that's the dude from the Alps who's following me. So my dream, that wasn't a dream. This is real. So he goes back to the museum and, he notices that the guy is in the museum waiting for him. He's telling people like, oh, I'm being followed, help me out. But of course, no one's paying him any mind because he's this bumbling idiot, right? So he finally gets confronted with Arthur here. And I like this little exchange because you get more of the story, more of the background as to why that scarab is important, what Arthur is really trying to do or somewhat try to do overall, right? And why he wants Steven to, why he may be trying to help Steven because he thinks he recognizes what's happening within him. He mentions that, the voices must be hard to deal with and all that. I'm trying to help you. He, at that point, even tries to judge him. Now, I'm thinking he might have done that because he's so curious about what is in Steven that he wants it for himself. But as he's doing that, he finds out that, wait a minute, this guy can't be judged. There's too much chaos in him, right? And I think even more so he realizes what's going on there, right? So during their exchange, they do talk about AMMIT because he says that, the scarab that you possess doesn't belong to me. It belongs to AMMIT. Do you know who AMMIT is? And Steven, of course, with his knowledge of Egyptian lore and history, he's like, oh yeah, AMMIT, one of the Egyptian gods, the first boogeyman on earth, or a boogeyman ever reported and all that stuff like that. So again, I did some additional research and I wanted to pull that up real quick. So again, this is according to the comics. AMMIT. The Sphinx AMMIT serves the Egyptian goddess Ma'at, asking riddles of sinners and devouring them if they fail to answer correctly. It goes on to say, as a servant of the Egyptian goddess Ma'at, the Sphinx AMMIT crosses between the elements, going everywhere without a home at her master's orders. In the underworld, she is the devourer of the dead and keen on asking riddles when summoned. If answered correctly, she helps the victor. If not, she devours their heart. So it also mentions here that AMMIT is shape shifting. So when transformed into her animal form, AMMIT can be all crocodile or an amalgam of animals, including crocodile head, lion's mane and paws, leopard spots and hippo hind, all this kind of stuff like that, right? So AMMIT is, this big figure that, obviously works alongside the goddesses there and could potentially be a big character within this series. And if Arthur is honed in on that, then it's a potential that we will see AMMIT maybe even show up in some sort of form, right? So again, really interesting stuff there, but we learn about that, and it sounds like Arthur kind of like worships AMMIT, right? And kind of like, he looks after him. So during their exchange, things are happening. Arthur is Steven is surrounded by all his minions that apparently either work in the museum or are pretending to be tourists, right? And all that. So again, this cult following expands and is really present around him. But the lights flash and Arthur manages to escape and everything like that. So we fast forward, it's already night, and guess what? Steven has inventory duty, right? So he's doing his inventory and all that stuff, and then he starts hearing noises, and he is tracking down the noises and all that. And this weird Egyptian looking beast is roaming around the museum and hunting him, so to speak, right? Now, the one thing I love about this sequence is that during certain scenes where you see the reflection, you see Steven walking around, but you see the reflection of Mark as he's like trying to look around and figure things out, and he just really wants to take control again, right? And you've seen that throughout the episodes in certain scenes where you just see Mark just like looking back at Steven, just like, God, I wish I could get back my body and all that. So eventually, the beast hunts him down and he's running away. He's hearing the voices in his head again, and he locks himself in this bathroom. And then there's this awesome exchange between him and his reflection. It's Mark talking to Steven through the mirrors, right? And basically, Steven is scared out of his mind, and you see Mark just be like, look, you yourself cannot do anything here. Let me manage it. Let me take control, and I will handle it, right? Like, I got this, because you alone can't do this, right? But of course, Steven is, very reluctant. He's confused and what have you. But I love that he finally gave in, and you see the transformation happening as he's letting himself go. You see, the robes forming around him, and then the beast busts through the bathroom, and we don't really see immediately what happens, but we see the aftermath. And that's when we finally get to see the full Moon Knight persona present, beating the living crap out of this beast and walking out, and end of episode right there. So again, a lot of it has to do with how you interpret the episode, right? And again, I've watched it twice. Like I said, I did some quick research online just to understand some of these characters and see where they're coming from, or what their involvement is with everything and all that. But it is a lot of fun already, this first episode, and I really cannot wait for them to explain more to the audience as to what's happening here between the Steven character and the Mark Spector character that's sharing this one body. And then you have Khonshu really trying to hone in on this human body to do what he's got to do on Earth, right? And then what is Arthur's role in all of this? Like, how much further is the battle between both of them gonna go? Or is there a potential that maybe they team up? We don't know, right? But I love how the episode played out. Again, that last bit where he's talking to himself in the mirror, Steven is finally realizing that there is something else in him, another persona there, and giving into that. And like, you really are dealing with kind of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scenario, a Hulk and Bruce Banner scenario, right? But in a more supernatural sense, right? I'm wondering, and again, this is me without diving too much into further Moon Knight lore and all that, because I kind of want to be surprised with everyone else as we're watching the episodes. Is the multiple personalities, is that just that? This does happen where people can have the ability to have two or more personas, right? And they go through it, and they snap into it, snap out of it, and all that. So is that a more natural occurrence, or was something done that kind of enabled this other being to take over this body at certain times and to live within one body, right, with Steven? Who's the main one? Is it Steven, or is it Mark, right? Mark Spector. We don't know. But, it'll be really, really interesting to find out as the series goes on. It's only going to be 6 episodes, but I love what they're doing right now. It feels just like how the Hawkeye series felt like. It felt like they just filmed one giant movie and then kind of divided it into the episodes that they needed, right? That's what it feels like, right? But so far, it's a lot of, and like I said, Oscar Isaac's performance so far is fantastic. I mean, he is doing an amazing job from what we can see right now, doing the dual roles, right? I mean, we only saw the Mark Spector role within the reflections of the mirror. I would love to see how that plays out in real life, right? But the Steven character is a trip, and I thought I was going to get tired of it like really quick, but I found myself loving it more and more the more I saw it. So yeah, so that's the episode right there. So again, would love to hear your thoughts about this episode. And I mean, it's only one episode. You don't really, with these shows, you never really get a sense of how this series pans out until after watching like 2 or 3 episodes in. But what are your thoughts and feelings on it? You know, like, did you enjoy this episode? Was it confusing to you? Were you like me? Did you end up doing a lot of research online to kind of try to put it all together and all that stuff like that? I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know. And again, like I said, if you enjoy this episode and episodes like this, don't forget, hit that like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you get notified every time a new episode or video is uploaded onto the YouTube channel. Audio listeners, I got your backs. I got you covered. You know, whether you're driving in the car, you're taking a crap in the bathroom, you're waiting for kids' soccer practice to end, and you want to hear this episode, you could find these episodes on your podcast platform of choice. Just look for the Low-Key Geek channel there and download the episodes from there. So that being said, that's the end of this episode. Looking forward to speaking with all of you again next week when episode 2 drops. So until then, stay cool, stay classy, stay safe, and I'll catch y'all next time. All right, peace.